Hello and good day. Welcome to the Super Good Camping Podcast. My name is Pamela.
I'm Tim.
And we are from supergoodcamping.com. We're here because we're on a mission to inspire other people to get outside and enjoy camping adventures such as we have as a family. Today's guests are a couple that have a slew of fur babies and love to camp with them. They know all of the ins and outs of camping with pets and document those adventures on their website, YouTube channel, and Instagram. Please welcome John and Britt of the Kas Pack.
Hi, guys.
Hey, nice to see you.
Thanks for coming out and having a yak.
Yeah.
No problem.
Just put my phone on Do Not Disturb because I always forget that.
Yes.
All right. So you guys are certainly, for my money, you're the biggest pet-friendly, pet-oriented outdoors folks that I know of. What's the origin story? How did that come about? Did you just have a bunch of fur babies and go, we like to camp, we're going to take them with us? What's the deal?
So we've been camping and hiking and spending time with our pets like that. My whole life. Like I grew up, we used to bring the dog and the cats with us when we camped when I was a little kid. And so it was just kind of something that I naturally did. And then he actually came into our relationship with like no camping experience. John had been camping once and it was a cabin and that's what he called camping. When I introduced him to camping, but I also introduced him to the fact that camping included my pets at the time. And he just kind of fell in love with being able to be outdoors with them and spend that time with them. There's something so rewarding about seeing them so happy, and they enjoy being outside too.
Yeah, and there's not that many resources either. If you go on YouTube and you try to search for like pet-friendly travel for camping, I mean, there's a lot of YouTubers that touch on it, but they don't go in depth for it.
Yeah, I think we touched on it in an episode as well about camping with our dog. But yeah, certainly not with cats. We have no experience with camping with cats.
Well, there's a good question. So I know I've seen you doing outdoorsy things with the dogs. Do you take the cats with you on occasion?
We do. So we currently have 3 cats. 2 of them are adventure cats. They have experience going out and spending time outdoors. One is relatively new to us. She actually just joined the pack at Christmas time, literally showed up at our cabin door here and hasn't left.
Okay.
And for those who don't know, like we're in the middle of nowhere in a cabin in the woods. And at midnight, this cat showed up at our front door. So we tried searching for a home. Nobody's looking for her. So Thea's now joined the pack. But yeah, our 2 older cats have been camping with us for a long time. They each have their own preferences. Like some cats do really well in the outdoors and some not so much. Jinx, our younger cat, she likes sunbathing on the campsite, and she likes being carried in her backpack when we hike, like the princess she is. But Pippin, our little diva, I think she thinks she's one of the dogs because she'll literally hike right alongside the dogs on her leash, and she just has a great time. She enjoys traveling everywhere, going out. She's flown with me. We went to Colorado for a pet event in November. She flew with me down to Colorado. She's just this little adventure jet setter who loves everything.
Yeah, I was curious about that. You said you had the cat on a leash. So that's how you just make sure that they don't get lost somewhere while you're camping?
Yeah. Both our cats, both our cats who already have experience are already leash and harness trained. We're currently leash and harness training Thea. In addition, we do have some pens that we set up, like when we're at the campsite. They're almost like little mesh tents that you can put out, and they have a place that they can go that we can take them off the leash if, for example, we're cooking or kicking back and reading a book or enjoying a campfire, because 5 leashes between them and the dogs would be a lot. But they're pretty much like having dogs in that sense. Like where a dog needs to be on a leash, the cats need to be on a leash. And they wander around and respond the same as the dogs for the most part.
I remember, this is an anecdote from way back, but having a cat and thinking, it'd be great to put her in the backyard, but put her on a harness and attach it to the clothesline, and she could just, wander around the backyard. Well, I put her in, seemed like the harness was secure. And she did this Houdini kind of thing where dislocate my shoulder and I'm going to get myself out of the harness. And she did. So anyways, I never did that again.
That's super, super common. Most harnesses actually are fairly easy for them to get out of. There's no such thing as an escape-proof harness. So there is a bit of training that's involved in that too, to teach them not to escape. We actually really, really heavily rely on the RC Pets Adventure Kitty harness for anyone who's considering harness training. From our experience, that's the one that's the hardest for them to escape early on. So while you're teaching them, it's the most secure. And a bonus, it's Canadian. RC Pets is Canadian. So it's a great product.
Excellent.
It's a great place to start if somebody's trying to harness train. But yeah, there's no such thing as an escape-proof harness, and cats are masters of it.
That's good to know. It wasn't a mistake that I made with the harness.
How do you? I can see that it's a semi-doable thing. 5 harnesses, that's a lot, man. How do you? Okay, let's just assume that that's wrangleable front country. I can't even imagine how you would do that in the back country. What's that secret? How do you pull that off?
So the biggest thing when we're going anywhere that we have to hike into or walk into or anything is the backpacks for the cats. So we each carry a backpack, one cat in his backpack because he gets the big, we have one big cat, 2 smaller cats now. So he gets the big cat and I take the 2 smaller ones. And that way they're on your back, they're away. Or if you're carrying a pack, let's say you're carrying in your gear, you can put the cat backpack on the front. But that way they're contained and you're only juggling the dog leashes until you get in. And then they can still have their outside time once you're there and you're set, because then you could, either, depending on where you're at, you could either let the dogs off leash if you're on Crown land, or you could secure the dogs somewhere so that you can then focus on getting the cats out and letting them have some on the ground, paws on the ground time too.
Cool. Wow. That's a lot of work, man.
But how do you find, like, with prey drive with both cats and dogs? Like, if a squirrel or a chipmunk or something's nearby, do they not, like, I know they're on leash, so they can't obviously go too far, but still, must be difficult to wrangle. I find even just here in the city on the leash with our current dog, she's got a stronger prey drive than our previous one had, but she would go after something.
There's definitely some additional training involved with that. We have actually one of our dogs is a German Shepherd Australian cattle dog. So his need to herd the second something moves is very strong. So there's been a lot of training, even to be able to coexist in the house with cats. There was a lot of training involved early on with him because he's just instinctually, he sees movement and that means work, right? On the same kind of foot, there's also training involved with the cats to teach them that you may see and want to watch the squirrel or watch the bird, but you can't just go take off after it. And cats actually train very similar to dogs if you do positive reinforcement with treats and responding that way.
Interesting. I would have just assumed, because cats can be, what's a non-swear word? Goofs. They would be more difficult to train because they're generally, I don't care. Too bad. I'm doing whatever I want to do.
More indifferent to what you want.
There you go. Indifference. Yeah. Interesting.
They're definitely a little harder to train. Some cats are different than others.
Yeah.
Some are easier to train. Like I said, Pippin thinks she's a dog. So she responds to pretty much everything like a dog. She trains like a dog. She comes when she's called. She plays fetch.
Very cool. One of the things that I found really interesting with what you guys do is pet first aid. Like, it hadn't really occurred to me before. We do all kinds of human first aid stuff, wilderness first aid, all that sort of training. But share some of the differences in doing pet first aid, and what kind of a kit do you drag along with you?
Yeah, so one of the biggest misconceptions that we found was that people assume that if you have a fully stocked pet first aid or human first aid kit, that you're good for your pet. And there's certain things that just aren't going to work without some additional pet focused things. John can speak to the importance of styptic powder to stop bleeding.
Yeah. So that's the stuff that you use for, like, if you catch a quick if you're trimming your dog's nails, right? It actively stops it. So yeah, I don't think we have had an occasion in camping.
No, but you had the incident at home.
Yes. Our old dog Dav, this is going back years ago. Britt was working in insurance. I was working on a farm, and I decided to, trim her nails, right? So then, I got her paws up, and she's really good. She'll just put her hand out, and it's just like clip, and she's over and done with, right? But the one time I clipped, and then by the time I got to the third one, the first one started bleeding. And then I was like, And then the second one started bleeding. And no response from this dog whatsoever. So of course I grabbed this stuff and, just dab it in and all that stuff. And basically it did what it was supposed to do, right?
You tried the alternatives first. He tried the flour first. So I came home from work And just to kind of speak to people about the importance of having actual styptic powder instead of the flour can work. However, I came home from work and there was flour everywhere and blood everywhere. Him sitting in the middle of the pile. So that's something that, I mean, the container's like this big. It's not a major addition to your kit. But if your dog happens to crack a nail, break a nail, even get like a little cut, that instantly stops the bleeding. And their nails in particular bleed really bad if you do have a nail injury. So that's one that we really, really heavily recommend everybody add. The other thing I would encourage everybody to add to their first aid kit that most people don't think about is just a basic bandana. And it's because it can serve so many purposes for a dog. You could use it to hold bandages in place because it's not like a human bandage. You can't just stick it on. There's fur there. Fur makes that ineffective. So the bandana helps to hold that in place if you happen to run out of or not have vet wrap or vet bandages. It can be used as a sling. It can be used as a makeshift muzzle because even the nicest dog might snap if they're in pain. It can even be used as a makeshift collar. If the collar gets broken in an emergency, you can wrap it up and tie it as a collar. That's one thing that's really, really small, but really, really important.
Yeah, very versatile to be able to use that for so many things. And certainly I've had those things happen. I've had a leash break. I've had a dog that was bleeding and we had to try to keep the dog from bleeding, and I've nicked a nail before too, and so I know your pain, John. With
I think every parent,
bleeding, it does bleed a lot.
Has nicked a nail at one point or another.
Oh, and I cried. I felt so awful that I had done that.
Yeah, I think every
not me. She does all the stuff. Okay, so I keep thinking of like I watch a lot of your social media, and I see you must not always take the entire brood. Like there must be times, because I'm sure I've seen, or maybe it was older stuff, but I know I've seen just you and the dogs out. Do you occasionally leave the cats, like I said, if it's a short trip, or how does that work?
Yeah, we have a few different ways that we decide who's going and when they go. When it comes to trips that involve a longer drive, like when we headed up to Lake Superior, we tend to leave the cats at home with a sitter just because Jinx doesn't do very well on car rides. And she also doesn't like being alone. So Pip stays with her just to, give her that companionship while we're gone. Versus if we go to a closer by park, then it's easier to bring the cats because you're not pushing it. Anything over about a 4-hour drive is a no-go for Jinx. She'll start to panic. And that's kind of an important thing to remember too, if you're considering bringing your pet, is understanding their limits and being okay to work around those limits. The other thing that we do that is really important to us is to do some one-on-one trips with some of the pets. So for example, last August, I actually had my nieces came to stay with me, my little nieces, and we took just the cats. And it was just the nieces, the cats, and I out in a trip. Like this April, I'm going to be heading into a backcountry site for Lucifer's first time backcountry, my little guy. So he's only done front country to this point. We've only had him for 3 years, and part of that was COVID. So he hasn't had a chance to get out and learn kind of the ins and outs of true backcountry. He's done like walk-in sites and, that kind of halfway measure. So he and I are taking a week at Killarney and just going out and enjoying that, just the two of us. And that's also important for bonding.
Cool. Where in Killarney?
We're doing the backcountry hike-in right on the Lacrosse Trail.
Cool. Nice. The hiking that I get is usually with a canoe over my head. Like
it's a portage.
The canoe thing was really great with our older dogs. They were both really awesome in the canoe, and we could canoe into sites. Lucifer is determined he needs to eat the paddle. We're still working on that. But in his attempt to eat the paddle as we're paddling, that tends to shake the canoe a little bit, and I worry a bit about gear. And we haven't actually introduced Willow to the canoe yet because we just got her last June. That's our big Anatolian. And she was afraid of water at first. So we've gotten her past her fear of water now. Now she'll go into water and hang out at the beach. But now that we've kind of crossed that bridge, we're moving on to the next one of introducing her to a canoe this year.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I've seen, sort of like Dennis Rogers. He takes his dog one in the canoe with him, and there's other people that do the same thing, but it's one. Like I don't know that I've ever seen anybody try to take two or more. Like just I would for sure be, all my gear would have to be.
Our older two were amazing. When we had Dav and Indy and we used to travel with Dav and Indy, Dav just liked to sit and look around, and Indy would fall asleep. He'd sleep the whole time we were paddling. We did have one canoe adventure that shortly after we got Lucifer, that we took Lucifer out, and it went really well. I actually have photos of the two of us and 3 dogs in the canoe.
Yikes.
But that's also when we discovered that he likes to try and eat the paddle and realized that we needed to just kind of take a step back with him on that. So, and luckily it wasn't a paddle inside. It was just like an introduce him to the canoe, take the canoe out in the lake. So we weren't worried about gear getting tipped in the process. But that's also an important step to consider for anyone who's considering taking their pet, is don't go out the first time in the canoe with all your gear, because you're probably going to regret it.
And I know with our previous dog, we went on a backcountry trip last fall, and he was a little restless in the canoe, but I think he was thirsty, and he kept kind of wanting, because the water's right there. So why can't I just stick my head over and get some water? But would tip the canoe.
Because I don't want to get wet. That's
Yes.
why you can't.
Yeah, that's also a concern with Lucifer we've had to work on. We've been doing a lot of place training with him because he's such a water lover that if we don't give him some sort of command to get him to settle down in the canoe, he's going over the edge and he's going for a swim. There's water there. He's swimming.
Yeah. Why can't I go swimming?
Yeah.
And do you have life jackets for your pets?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. We're strong believers that if you're ever in a situation where you have to wear a life jacket or you need any type of safety gear, your pet does too. So we bring life jackets for actually all of the pets. If they're out in the water, will have life jackets. Even the cats can be fit with the smallest dog life jackets, or there's specialized cat life jackets you can get from a company called Surfer Cat.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I saw, we're going back a few years, but I remember the first time I saw Salis put out a life jacket, pet life jacket. It's like, hey, brilliant idea. Never even thought about it. That's excellent. So I also read something about presentations. What you do presentations. How does that play out? You said you went California at some point, and I think recently, maybe even when we're the day we're taping this, I think yesterday you were putting a presentation together.
Yeah, so I actually work in the marketing space. I'm a digital marketing, specifically SEO, so Google and how to make sure that your business is found on Google specialist. And because of that, I made a lot of connections kind of all over the world, which grew as we started taking our actual pet related business seriously, because I already had all these connections to kind of take that step. So I do a lot of traveling because I do a lot of talking about the marketing side of things, but also because I am somebody that people tend to come to for the reactive dog side of things. So there's been a really bad misconception for a long time that reactivity is aggression and they shouldn't be allowed out in public. And I've made it my mission to get out there and share what reactivity is truly, which is just an overabundance of emotion. And it can be fear, it can be anger, but it could also be excitement. A dog can be reactive because they're just so excited at the sight of people or dogs. And to also try and share with people how to include even a reactive dog in their travels safely and responsibly. And that's what I was talking about yesterday in an online symposium.
So how do you?
The biggest thing is just to know their limits, know their triggers, and take steps to try and create a safe place. So, for example, when we're camping and hiking, Lucifer, he came to us from a really bad abuse situation as just a young pup. He was 4 months old and had some severe injuries from his past. So he's afraid of people, specifically men. Any man he doesn't know. So when we're camping, we have to set up our campsite to make sure we block any visuals so he feels like that is his safe place. Sometimes we can do that by setting up our tents in a way that creates a barrier. If that doesn't work, we can always put up a bit of a tarp wall. He's fairly small. He's only 30 pounds, so it doesn't have to be a really tall tarp wall. It can even be just a short thing that's tall enough for him. And through commands, you can help to mitigate that when you're on the trails. Things like look can draw his attention away from catching a trigger in the distance, or leave it can tell him to disengage with the trigger. A lot of counter conditioning, introducing a trigger at a distance while giving treats and praise and encouraging him for being calm, even though that trigger is at a distance. And the big thing that I think needs to be talked about more in the pet space is muzzle training. Muzzles have this really bad stigma for some reason, and I don't understand why, because it's no different a tool than a collar or a harness or a leash. If you introduce your dog to a muzzle very carefully and casually, you can create a positive experience with it. Like when we pull the muzzle out, Lucifer gets excited. We have a custom vinyl muzzle from Mia's Muzzles. And when we pull it out, he gets excited because he knows it means adventure time. And anytime that we know that we're going on a trail that is a little bit more popular and there's any risk that we might be in a narrow part of the trail with people he doesn't know, I always make sure he's muzzled, because if he felt he was cornered and he had to defend himself, He's never landed a bite on somebody or tried to land a bite on somebody, but I know that the risk is potentially there, and it's better to just be prepared and put those safety measures in place before something happens.
Yeah, that sounds like a smart move. Yeah, cool. All right. Social media time. Tell us about all your content creation and your amazing Facebook.
Okay, so the Facebook group's been around for a few years, and we're just under 25,000 members, active members, which is
That's awesome.
Crazy. There, we also do have a Camping and Hiking Ontario Cats group as well, which, I mean, there's not that many people in that one, but it's growing. But yeah, YouTube is our, we just started doing that like a couple of years ago. We just released a video about Rasul, and probably this week we'll be releasing a new video for Fairbank.
Yeah, so we also have a blog where we do written content, and it's educational content largely for people who are interested in trying to learn how to camp with their pets, or who maybe want to try different experiences or taking it to different levels, tips and tricks. And that's the kaspack.com. And that's also kind of like a central hub for us. So if you go to the website, it will lead you out to all of our socials, which includes Instagram and TikTok, where we share little short videos as well, just showing what it's like to be out with pets and offering tips and tricks and advice for people who want to include their pets in their outdoor adventures.
Well, and you're a big advocate for rescue, I see too, from your website.
Yes, yeah. All of our pets are rescue pets. While I don't condone breeders or breeding, I do believe there's a space for that. For the average family pet, I think there are so many incredible pets out there in shelters and rescues that are looking for a home, and they have so much love to give. Like, all of ours have either come from a rescue organization or, like the case of Thea, got rescued in a different way. She never made it into a rescue organization, but if we didn't keep her, she would have, because she had been dumped and needed a home. So like, these are amazing, incredible, trainable, well-behaved pets that have so much love to give and can be the perfect adventure buddy.
Well, we can speak for that for ourselves, that we rescued a dog in November from Toronto Animal Services. And she came to us very, very uncertain, very afraid, very, like, every little thing scared her. She was cowering. We assumed she'd been abused in her previous home.
She was abused by a man, for sure, because she started to open up. She bonded with Pamela way sooner than me. I tend to be a talk with my hands kind of guy, and she would just cower, get down on the ground. She was terrified of me. It almost made me cry. It was so saddening to see that
she'd been mistreated so badly. Yeah.
And then,
so anyway, she's a wonderful dog. And as you said, she's trained up beautifully. We've had no issues. She's a wonderful, sweet
nut bar.
Sweet nut bar.
She's hit the jackpot, so much joy, having such a loving home that'll take her out and help her adventure and spend time and give her that opportunity.
Well, we kind of feel like we hit the jackpot personally. That's our first experience with rescuing a dog, and it just felt like, wow, I didn't know it could be such a good experience.
Yep.
Yeah, they are such incredible pets. We got Lucifer actually from Tennessee, and like I said, he came from a questionable situation down there, and he was only 4 months old, which is just heartbreaking that at that young an age he was already that afraid of people because what he had been through. And then after we unfortunately had to say goodbye last year to both of our senior pups, who were also both rescues, we recently rescued Willow from a local rescue. And she was once a Turkish street dog and then got brought over to Canada. And now she's living the high life here at the cabin as a spoiled daddy's girls.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I read your story about Lucifer, and that was just heartbreaking. I cannot imagine anyone doing things like that to a dog.
Don't you make me sad. I don't like this.
All right.
How about tell us a story? Tell us a camping story that went phenomenally well, or was it absolute disaster and you got to learn a bunch of things?
Do you want to tell them about the time you tried to introduce Lucifer to the canoe and he dove off the edge as soon as you got Dav in?
Let's see. Well, actually, let's
tell them about when you took Dav and Indy hiking at Lake Superior.
Okay, so this was our big Lake Superior trip. She took Lucifer out on a trail. I forget which one.
We went on the Big Nokomis Trail.
Yeah, and I took the older two on, I forget what trail it was, but it was more of like a casual type of thing, right? Anyways, I got the 2 older dogs, and there's these various lookouts on this trail looking out in the water. And so then, like, I got the 2 dogs, go check out this view and take a couple pictures and turn around to get back onto the trail. And Indy bumped into Dav, and Dav fell into the water, and she was like, it was probably about, I mean, for me, I'm 6'3", so it was probably about waist deep for me, but for her, I mean, she was like neck down. So of course, you know, I actually had to, like, they have harnesses, and thankfully the harnesses actually have like a handle on them. So I just go in there and just yank this 70-pound dog out of the water as fast as I could. And yeah, she was just like, yeah, well, whatever. No big deals.
He says she was knocked in, but I know from previous hiking trips that this dog has been known to try to jump off boardwalks. She was always a problem with that. She believed that, kind of like I said, Lucifer is like, there's water, I get in. Well, Dav believed there's water, I get in. And in that trip, for kind of context, she's 15 years old. And her, even at that age, she's like, there's water, I get in.
Which, when we got back to our campsite, we basically, you know, just put her right back into the water, where it was actually not marsh water, it was Lake Superior water. So
I think she kind of won in the end, because she got to not only play in the muddy water she wanted to play in, but then we got back to our waterfront campsite and she got to play in the lake. And then when she was done playing in the lake and rinsing off, she got to dry off by the campfire. So she lucked out. But yeah, she, even the really well-behaved ones, and 15 years old, you'd think she'd be calm. And no, she's still deciding when she needs to go in places and not always listening.
Reminds me of taking our previous dog in a paddle boat at Ontario Park. So we rented a paddle boat over there. He was sitting on the back, and I think he slipped off the back right into the water. He had his harness on, so it was similar to you, John. Just like reach down, grab by the harness, and yank him back into the paddle boat.
We've used the harness a couple times.
No, he was not 70 pounds.
Yeah, we've used the harness a couple times with the Lucifer too, because he'll just like right off the side of a boat or a kayak or a canoe. And like even the life jackets have handles on the back, and it's a good thing. Now, luckily with him, he's only 30 pounds. He's a smaller pup, but he gets lifted back into the boat quite often. We're still working on that
one. It would be boring if there wasn't a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, just like us, they have their personalities and their preferences too, right? So you're kind of working with their personalities, whereas one dog, Indy, for example, used to get into the canoe and just sleep the whole time. Lucifer is like on high edge, like, I must eat the paddle. I must go swimming. And so they all bring their own kind of unique flavor to your adventures too.
Cool. Well, I'm glad I tripped across your stuff, because it's not something we have done a ton. I mean, our previous Farley would go front country camping with us, but he could care less. Like he was
a bit of a diva. He'd sit in the car a good deal of the time while we were camping.
Yeah, or lay in the dirt. That was it. That was it for him. He didn't want to know. I'm hoping our new fur baby's more adventurous. Looking forward to getting her out and doing maybe some backcountry. We'll see.
We're looking forward to seeing you share as you get out with her more and see how that goes for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your idea of don't do it with a canoe full of gear, I will remember that, because I don't want to be wet and watching gear sink to the bottom of the lake. Not that I don't have enough extra gear to replace it, but whatever.
Oh yeah. The first time we took Dav out, she completely collapsed the canoe because she got excited about the sight of a duck. So we're very strong advocates for introducing them to the canoe first and then add gear to the equation.
Yep. I don't think I'll forget that. If I do, I'll let you know.
I think for me, the biggest thing that we hope to get out by putting all of the information out that we do is that while it may change your trip a little bit, it might involve a slightly different setup or slightly different gear or slightly different considerations of what you're doing while you're camping. There is something so rewarding about sharing your adventures with these pets that hold such a special place in your heart and in your life, and being able to see them, happy and hiking and swimming. And it's such a rewarding experience that those minor changes or those little things we need to learn along the way are so worth it. It's so worth taking the step.
Awesome.
Love it.
That's it for us for today. Thank you so much for joining us for a chat, the Kas Pack. And please do check us out on our subsequent episodes. If you would like to reach out to us, we are on all of the social media. We're on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and please do subscribe to us on YouTube. And if you want to talk to us, email us anytime. We're at hi@supergoodcamping.com. That's hi@supergoodcamping.com. And please do check out the Kas Pack, Kas Pack on YouTube and Instagram. And please do join their Facebook group. And the kaspack.com is where you can find them on their website. And you'll get all
it's an excellent
things.
blog. Yeah.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.